To a young woman who's raised serious questions about the cockpit behaviour of one of the pilots from the Malaysian Airlines jet missing with 239 people on board. Live now to Elise Elliott with this Current Affair exclusive. Elise?
Trace, tonight, a staggering insight into actually what can go wrong on a Malaysian Airlines international flight. Our investigation reveals astounding breaches of security. How on earth did two teen travellers not only get invited inside the cockpit, but stay there for the duration of the flight, from takeoff to, would you believe, landing? Tonight's photos and stories paint a disturbing picture of one of the co-pilots aboard missing Malaysia Airlines flight 370.
The aircraft was carrying a total of 239 passengers and crew.
Throughout the whole flight, they were talking to us. They were actually smoking throughout the flight, which I don't think they're allowed to be doing. And they were taking photos with us in the cockpit while they were flying. I was just completely shocked. I couldn't believe it.
These are the photos that will shock the airline industry and terrify passengers as the mystery surrounding missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 intensifies. Pictures that reveal an unbelievable insight into lax security on board.
I know for the whole time they weren't facing the front of the plane actually flying.
Holiday snaps that show on this particular Malaysia Airlines flight how two young, attractive girls were invited into the cockpit for an entire international flight.
Were you there for takeoff?
Yes, we were.
And landing?
Yes.
Even though the pilots were responsible for possibly hundreds of passengers, it's claimed their focus was on entertaining their teenage guests.
Possibly a little bit sleazy. They invited us, or not invited us, they asked us if we couldn't arrange our trip to stay in Kuala Lumpur for a few nights so that they could take us out.
More chilling is the fact this co-pilot, Fareeq Abhamid, is the very same pilot aboard the missing Malaysia Airlines flight.
Well, then when I realised that it was the exact same co-pilot, and not only that, but that I had met him and that I'd been in the cockpit with him and that I have photos with him, that was quite shocking. It was just my best friend and I just wanted to get away, so we booked about a 2-week trip to Thailand. We were just in Phuket the whole time, just a holiday.
Jonty Ruiz and her girlfriend Jan Marie were having the time of their lives in Thailand.
And how would you describe the trip?
Amazing. Oh, the most fun I've ever had. I don't think we got to bed one morning before 5. It was really, really good.
For the pair, the real fun started at Phuket Airport when they were plucked from the boarding queue by the Malaysia Airlines pilots.
We were standing in line at the boarding gate just with everybody else, and the pilot and co-pilot walked past us and came back and asked us if we would like to sit with them in the cockpit during the flight. So obviously we said yes.
Why obviously?
It's an exciting thing. It's something that not everybody gets to do. I think anyone would have jumped at the opportunity.
There is no indication the girls were given authority by Malaysia Airlines. When a Current Affair contacted the airline in Malaysia, we were told by a spokesperson under no circumstances are passengers permitted in the cockpit, and certainly not during takeoff and landing. Despite this, once seated on the plane and before takeoff, an air steward came to fetch the girls from their seats.
Did the air steward seem at all surprised you were invited up the front into the cockpit?
I actually think the air steward helped us to fold out the jump seat, so she knew that we were going to be sitting in there and she didn't seem like it was anything unusual.
Did the pilot seem familiar with having people in the cockpit?
It didn't seem unusual to them. I think they might have before invited people into the cockpit with them.
It's an astounding breach of security that two young holidaymakers were allowed in the cockpit for pre-flight and takeoff, as these photos show.
We were sitting on a pretty uncomfortable seat behind the pilot, and throughout the whole flight they were talking to us. They were actually smoking throughout the flight, which I don't think they're allowed to be doing. At one stage they were pretty much turned around in their seats talking to us, and they were so engaged in conversation that he took my friend's hand and he was looking at her palm and said, "Oh, your hand's very creased, that means you're a very creative person," and he commented on her nail polish and stuff like that.
Jonty, who is travelling in Australia for a year, emailed a Current Affair with this startling insight into questionable practice aboard this flight.
Why have you decided to come forward and speak about this?
It seems like everybody's completely in the dark and nobody has any information. So I thought the tiny bit that I have, I just want to share, and maybe it can help with something. And I'm not I'm really not saying that I think that the co-pilot was in the wrong in this flight at all. It could have been absolutely anything, but this is just a little bit of information that I have.
Co-pilot Fareeq Abdul Hamid is one of 239 people on board Flight 370 when it disappeared en route to Beijing from KL on Saturday. He's 27 years old. His position, first officer with Malaysia Airlines. He joined in 2007. He's racked up 2,763 flying hours. Despite the fact smoking is banned for passengers, the rules did not apply to the men in the cockpit.
And you didn't mind being in a cockpit with smoking?
Oh, no,
pilots?
we didn't. My friend and I said to each other in Afrikaans that, like, I wish they'd stop smoking because it's a really small, confined space and neither of us smoke, so it was a bit annoying, but can't exactly tell a pilot to stop smoking.
But looking at these photos, it looks like something that maybe should be happening in a bar, not in a cockpit. Did you feel safe?
I did feel safe. I don't think there was one instance where I felt threatened or I felt that they didn't know what they were doing. The whole time I felt that they were very friendly, but I felt that they were very competent in what they were doing.
So, Jonty, this is Fareeq Ab Hamid's Facebook page. He had sent you a message, hadn't he, after your flight together?
Yeah, just after our flight, he just sent me a friendly message saying, have a safe flight back home. It's over there.
Have a safe flight back home with a little smiley. So that was December 14, 2011. How do you feel knowing that the pilot who invited you into the cockpit is the very same pilot who was flying the plane when it disappeared?
I thought it was crazy. Immediately I wanted to phone the friend that I was travelling with and tell her about the story, and I was just completely shocked. I couldn't believe it. When I saw all his friends and his family posting on his wall, obviously my heart really broke for them and my heart broke for all the families and of the passengers. It's a really sad story.
And 4 days on, there is still no sign of any wreckage and no clear indication of why flight MH370 disappeared.